agus fáilte blá ormh go trí seascad an programach BBC ALBA a hadal go críoscéalach na bhòrdadh-sneachda an an Salesforce na ALBA. Is me Iona Ballantyne agus ha mí toiltearina go bhfuil àrd-oifigear Glasgow City Laura Montgomery ar ais callrooms in stiùidio. Seo súlachan ar na hacin ar a program na Heicheanoch. A sin breanú Aimee Fuller a haar noch go dathúras ag Geamaichean Oilimpigeach a Gheabhraí mu chugunnach éiche bhòrdadh-sneachda a leigeil seachad. Agus tá Seonaid McIntosh a gamas ar a chéad Geamaichean Oilimpigeach éiche a sé go bhí ar a Cluinnidh mar an tè-losgaidh ar an till and a dábhalas a h-Eòrpa. Laura, thank you so much for coming back on 360.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you. Now, I know it has been a hard week this week. It has been the second anniversary of your partner, Kat, who had a huge influence in so many different avenues, but in particular women's football and Glasgow City.
Yeah, massively. Obviously, I'm extremely biased, but I think most people will say Kat's one of our best players, if not the best player that's ever played for us. So a huge impact in terms of her abilities on the field, but also, to be honest, her strive for the game to be better as well, and that helped us a lot with our ambitions and what we wanted to do.
And it is clearly evident with so many lovely messages just pouring through across social media, and I'm sure she would be so proud of you, especially with your new role with Glasgow City, which has changed since the last time you were on the programme.
Yeah, she'd probably be delighted to think I might be working slightly less as opposed to 2 jobs that I used to drive her to distraction, that I did all those hours. But yeah, no, I think she'd be really proud that I'm finally doing the job that I love full time.
And how is that job going? Because I know you've taken it up in the middle of a pandemic.
Yep.
There's a lot going on with the suspension of the league just now. I mean, personally and as a club, how are you coping with that?
It's really challenging, to be honest. I think we're hugely frustrated that we're not able to train, we're not able to play. So that's that's challenging for everyone at the club. Obviously most importantly for the players. That are professional athletes and really can't do their job at the moment.
How are the players? Because I know it's very important to you for their mental health and for player welfare to kind of keep them engaged, keep them training and get back training playing as soon as possible.
Yeah, listen, it's hugely challenging. Professional athletes kind of strive for that. Getting better. They have structure in their lives. It's very kind of regimented what they do when they go to training, what they eat, and all that's been completely abandoned. Even to the fact that if I reflect on, we brought in a number of players in the transfer window. All who have come into a foreign country, left their family, friends. Some have even left partners, husbands, the lot, and they've come here and now they can't see anybody, they can't train. So mentally that has to be hugely challenging for them. Obviously, I think we're a really close knit group. Very much a family club. We look after each other, but COVID's really tough for everyone, and I don't want to make football seem that we're struggling more than anyone else. But I think given the fact for our game that there is football currently being played in this country, but it's just not the top end of the women's game, it's the top end of the men's game. That's probably what makes it that little bit more frustrating.
How are the players? Have you spoken to them, or are they telling you how they're coping with it?
Yes, the players pester me daily as to what's happening. They tend to know when I have a meeting with the SFA or different things. So yeah, they are messaging me constantly. When can we get back? When can we do this? So they are 100%. They're massively struggling, without being able to train and see their teammates and things. So yeah, I'm kind of regular contact with them.
Well, that's the thing. As you were just saying there, the men's top league, the Premiership, and the Championship are playing just now. Everything else below that's been suspended, but I mean, the women's top league has just been thrown into that with the men's. I know that really frustrates you.
It is. Listen, there's so many things about this that has frustrated me. I mean, I think even largely when you look at the start, when the suspension came in, at the start of January, even the language that was used, the language was basically everything below the men's championship. Now, women's football, we don't sit below the men's championship. We're not even in that pyramid. So that kind of hits home that maybe I don't want to say we're an afterthought. Sometimes I don't even know if we're a thought. That language is even so incorrect. I find it hugely challenging that we're not allowed to even train and abide by the same protocols that the top men's teams are doing. There's been an argument put towards us that, well, not every team in our league's professional, so why should we be allowed? But not every team in the men's championship's professional. They have players that have jobs, but yet they're allowed to continue under the professional exemption. So it's been very challenging. Even the fact that I think there's about 27 senior international players in the SWPL1, and it's the FIFA Women's window coming up, 14th to the 23rd. So a number of those players haven't trained at all. In January, that massively affects their opportunity for their careers to be selected for their national team. Obviously, Scotland managed to get around that by bringing in the Scotland-based players on their own. But then I find that struggling as a club, because it's the SFA telling me that they're safe to train our players, but yet we're not safe to train them, and it's safer to have them travel through to one location in Edinburgh rather than Glasgow. I could go on for a long time about this, but yeah, I'm extremely frustrated.
Is it the lack of consistency across the board that's really kind of making this a problem? I
think the biggest thing for me is I don't feel at times that we are looked upon differently, and we are different. We're the top end of the women's game. The top end of the men's game is looked at differently from the rest of the men's game, whereas I kind of feel at the moment, we're just kind of been lumped in, with everything else. The SFA have been the ones, or the Joint Response Group have been the ones that have made the decisions up until now as to what football takes place, what football doesn't. So they made the decision, the Joint Response Group made the decision wholly on their own to suspend, our game in January. But yet, this week, the decision's passed to the government to make that decision on football. That's a complete change of direction. I don't think the government would have been asked whether or not the men's Premiership or Championship can continue. The SFA made that decision. So all these things are challenging, but I think a lot of it comes down to, systematic underrepresentation of our game. We don't sit in the Joint Response Group. We really have pretty much no representation on the SFA board. There's a very loose one there, the fact that we're part of the non-professional game board, but then that's questionable. Why are we even in the non-professional game when we've got professional teams? So there's countless things, but I think it's just, as I say, I think it's an end process of probably 18 months, particularly of frustration, of kind of lack of advancement of the game. Because
for you and Glasgow City, I mean, you've spoken about it before, you just want to train, you've got the money there to do the testing, as you say, a professional club, and you just can't do it just now.
Yeah, it's hugely frustrating, because as I say, there's men's teams been afforded that opportunity to do so, and we're not. And I think women's netball is back now, which is fantastic. I'm so pleased for them. Everybody wants sport to continue. For me, I particularly want elite women's sport to continue to have that showcase. It's been deemed really important that the top end of the men's game is visible. But less important that the top end of our game is visible. But there's a sport back now that's an indoor sport that's involving passing a ball about to each other, and that's frustrating that they're allowed to train in Scotland. I do admit their games are taking place in England, but they're able to train in Scotland indoors, and yet we can't train outdoors with all following all the protocols that would be asked of us.
Well, it's very frustrating, but hopefully we will be back to it soon, Laura.
Hopefully, very much so.
As jy 3 bliadhna bhòrdadh-sneachda, Aimee Fuller dreuchd leigeil, trí seascad bhí brúnú rúnach Olympicach bhreatain go súlthóirsearás dreuchd na Ballantyne.
The only thing you can control on the mountain is riding as well as you can. If you fall over, then it's kaput, it's done. So when you've got to get through 3 rounds in a World Cup, qualifications, semis and finals, and you need to be in the finals because you're not going to the Olympics, it's mentally the building blocks to get through to the different rounds is very hard. And there is an element of chess because you have to land. So you want to play it safe, but you also want to push it so you're going to get through. So there is tactics, but you sort of form a run that works for you, and then it's about how you take that run and put it on different courses, because each course is completely different. It's the ability to ride any feature with confidence. I think the mentality towards training that and being able to adapt in that environment is consistency in putting yourself in uncomfortable situations, really. You are essentially your own boss, and you have creative control of how you approach the course, which I think makes it really special. I just absolutely loved it, the sense of freedom, the opportunity to be completely creative. It's this sport that's so open, there's no rules, and I just really loved it.
Huad Aimee Fuller che rucha gan na Lunning ui an na bhòrdadh-sneachda na bhaid fudach am sna Stáiteann Uaimhneachta I dheis an na 2007.
The glory days of snowboarding were magical. You had brands, you had teams, and the teams were mixed. It wasn't like you're just the British team or you're just the French team or just the Americans. You had global brands, you know, picking riders, and I was a part of the Roxy team. And to be a part of that movement of females in board sports and that eclectic crew of amazing role models. And then in 2012, it was announced that slopestyle would go into the Olympics. And then of course, that changed my life, you know, going to the Olympics. So I went in 2014, wow, it seems a long time ago now. My first one, and I'm so grateful to the fact that snowboarding has become, or slopestyle has become an Olympic sport. But it's definitely changed it. It's changed it for good and for bad. It's opened up a lot of opportunities. It's given a lot of the riders to create platforms. It's a bigger exposure, and you know you get recognised for your sport, which is amazing.
Bharach iddi bhí Farpais ag na Geamaichean X ha Aimee is skipabhrichting ar ochgachuig da thuras ag Geamaichean Oilimpigeach Gheamairí, Sochi an na 2014 agus Pyeongchang an na 2018.
The criteria at the time for 2014 was top 24 in the world and 2 top 12s for Team GB. You need to be in, you know, prove that you were, you know, in the mix. And I'd had such a rough run that I had to literally do it in the last 2 events for the games, which you know, obviously puts you through excruciating pressure like you wouldn't imagine when there's 70 girls at the top of a World Cup slopestyle contest in the States and you need to get a top 12, and I got 11th. And then it was 2 weeks before the games in 2014, and I needed top 6 or better to scrape into the top 24 just through missing a multitude of competitions. And I scraped 5th, and like being able to ring my mum at the bottom of the mountain and go, I've done it. And yeah, it's moments like that I will, you know, I'll never forget. They shape and mould who you are, having to deal with the pressure and, you know, the most intense moments. I had a really good year in 2017, which meant I qualified for the second Olympics quite early. I finished 5th overall in the slopestyle World Cup rankings in 2017, and then 3rd in the big air, which pretty much gave me an automatic ticket for, you know, representing Team GB in my second game. So yeah, a lot of life lessons learned in between those 2 cycles, and of course going then in 2018 for 2 disciplines changed everything. Again, but it's madness where a sport can take you. I think if you truly love it, you know.
Nach garm gynnysta da Aimee nu da gyntig I hen sa mahad marathon Lunning a gianú cánlach, ruta gynna haidid vi gamasid son únia fata.
January 2019, I got completely lost in Richmond Park, covered in mud, and I put a story up on Instagram just like, just done a run, you know, can't beat the feeling of, you know, a long run, but covered in mud, completely lost. And the next minute I had someone from the Olympic channel message me going, hey Aimee, just seen you're running the marathon. You don't fancy running another marathon, do you? And I was like, haha, yeah, nah. Literally, yeah, nah. What was the response? And she goes, hear me out, it's in North Korea, you know, for a documentary for the Olympic channel. I was like, tell me more. And little did I know, I think it was like 6 weeks later, I'd put my phone, my laptop in a vault in Beijing, and I was on my way on a Koiro Air 2-star ex-Russian plane to North Korea to run a marathon. So crazy times. What I sort of gained from that was, I think, re-emphasising how like powerful sport is and how it can bring people together no matter of background, ability, race. And I really saw that in North Korea, and I just loved the element of working with a team. So it was like, even though I had to run the marathon, we were all in it together to create, you know, this ace documentary. And I love being a part of the whole picture of us working together to make it work.
Sa nulach an bliadhna, dhís Aimee go bhfuil leigeil seachad a dríoch fó bhí Farpais an na bhòrdadh-sneachda.
You know, for me, it's definitely not goodbye to snowboarding. It's just goodbye to competition, because I'm a person that everything I do, I want to put 100% into it, and I really enjoy the broadcast, and I can't do both 100%. So I've decided to focus my energy there and you know, just really still continue to enjoy and experience the mountains for what they are, because there is much more to them than the start gate. You know, when you compete professionally, you ride the same run all day, back and forward, and as amazing as it's been, I'm ready to experience more and new things. So yeah, it's kind of cool in a way that you know, I feel lucky that I've found something else that gives me a kick that's slightly less dangerous, yet I can still enjoy snowboarding. So I feel like good and excited about the next chapter. If you're passionate about what you do and you put the work in, it will come good. And I think in snowboarding, that's my biggest example. And then now with what I'm doing as well, I'm super passionate about it. So if you love something and you put the graft in, you will get the opportunity.
Laura, such a cool career there from Aimee, and it was really interesting what she was saying about kind of getting back up when you fall. I mean, you can take that across the board in sport, literally and metaphorically, that you do need to keep going when things aren't going right.
100%. I mean, I think it's almost like a lesson for life, but I think very much so in sport, because in sport you are going to get setbacks, you know, you are going to get injuries, you are going to get loss of form, you might hit a pandemic when you can't do your job. You know, so all these things, you know, definitely are going to affect you, and I think the very best sports people learn to deal with that better than anyone else.
It's also amazing to see the opportunities that sport can bring. A marathon in North Korea, who would have ever thought? No, exactly. And I was thinking if I'd been asked to be part of a documentary, I wouldn't have been the one doing the marathon as part of it. But yeah, she seems an incredible woman, you know, and really inspirational. And really as well, it's just so infectious when she's talking about her sport. You know, it was absolutely lovely to see. And another thing that is important in women's sport, and like Aimee was talking about too, is the brand partnerships. Is that something you want to see more of here?
Yeah, very much so. I think more brands are coming into the game. I mean, certainly if I reflect on our own club, you know, years gone past, I would be, you know, pestering companies to try and work with us. If I'm honest now, brands approach us, you know, and want to work with us. They, you know, they like what we stand for. They think that creates, you know, something unique and different for them, for their customer base to look up to. So I think it's, you know, women's sport just now is a great place to invest in, and hopefully we see more of it.
That's brilliant. Are you needing to turn anyone down just now?
Yes, I've turned down 2 actually over Christmas, just don't quite fit our values.
Good position to be in though.
Yeah, well I think I think for us as a club, you know, our values and what we stand for are hugely important, and it's perhaps what very often makes us unique, so that will always be integral to our decision making.
Brilliant. And the thing is with Aimee as well, what she was kind of talking about at the end there was retirement. And I know for so many people in sport, it can be hard accepting when your kind of sporting career is coming to an end.
Yeah, you're trying to suggest that I'm old enough to have retired here? Yeah, I retired obviously a long time ago. I mean, certainly, listen, it was an easy decision for me. I certainly wasn't talented like Aimee was, but even for someone like myself, you know, I decided about a year before I actually did. You know, I decided going into what was then my last season that it certainly wasn't something I think I could have made, you know, rashly. So you know, I hadn't really told anyone, only Kat knew, but I knew then it was my last cup final, it was my last Champions League game, you know, so I was kind of mentally prepared, which I think is a really unique position to be in, because I think, you know, sometimes when sports people are robbed of their careers through injury, I think that must be very mentally challenging, but I kind of prepared myself for 12 months, so it was fine.
How was your mindset going into those games, especially apart from Kat knowing, like, none of your teammates know?
Fine, I think I actually enjoyed them more, because I knew what they meant. You know, as I say, I think I'd have been more disappointed if it had been robbed from me, or I was injured and then suddenly I hadn't had time to reflect. But, you know, I really took in, you know, we had a really successful, with a number of successful years, thankfully, when I played, but, you know, even my last year we were really successful, and that was just really nice to know that, you know, we'd won, we'd accomplished, and I didn't retire on I only wish we had, you know, so it all worked out quite well.
Because we do find that some women who come on to 360, it can be hard accepting retirement, and a lot of them still have never said out loud, I've retired from football or from sport?
Yeah, and I think a lot of that comes down to identity. You know, I think a lot of top female footballers, you know, sports people in general, you tend to be identified by your sport, and people maybe only know you as X person, the football player. I think certainly I was different because probably nobody knew me as Laura the football player. You know, I kind of was probably more identified as the person that ran the club, and that was probably an easy transition because actually I was at an age where I wanted to give even more to that, and it was becoming impossible to balance, to do the both, to play and still run the club. So that probably helped from that identity thing, but I do think that's probably the biggest challenge because that's kind of what you're known for, and suddenly that part of your life goes away.
Well, Laura, maybe not Laura the player, but definitely Laura the game changer now.
Yeah, well, trying to make things better.
You are, definitely. A Seonaid McIntosh h-Eòrpa bhòrdadh hócail at Geamaichean Oilimpigeach Tokyo ar an tairg sa Tíin. Gad na ceili has d'ach-figeadh-sicéir, sin tè-losgaidh bhreatanach a sarabhacail a bhain riamh, agus hair san sinna gearibh ganis ag Cluinnidh sáirte.
Carán sé alpanach Seonaid McIntosh an dúlí spórs Glasgow Ballantyne, mas de hunnig a pure Farpais an spórs ag na Geamaichean Oilimpigeach.
So when I was younger, I got dragged around the country a wee bit from my parents and my sister, I guess, to go to different shooting competitions, and I was really not interested when I was younger. I kind of thought the whole thing was quite boring for a while. I guess probably because I wasn't doing it, I suppose. But yeah, I was like, no, this isn't for me. This is boring. It was kind of my big sister's thing, and we didn't always get on as children. So I was kind of like, no, I don't really want to do what she's doing. I want to do something different, make my own path. So yeah, for a long time, I just didn't want to do it as a kid. And actually I got into it after the London Olympics. My sister competed at the London Olympics, and I think seeing her compete there and seeing what that international environment was like, I was kind of actually no, this does look fun. I want me some of this. So yeah, that's how I got into it. Before I decided to do it internationally, I shot at school, and we had a cadet force. So I shot for the school team and whatever. And I'd shot some pretty decent scores. And my our shooting master, whatever you want to call him, I'm not sure what his actual role is. He used to quite enjoy pitting me against my sister because he thought it was good motivation for me. I was always quite competitive with her, so I was wanting to beat her. So he'd always be like, oh well, your sister didn't shoot this score in this match, or your sister's got this record, maybe you could beat it. So I think back when I was in school and I was kind of beating her scores, I was kind of well, if I'm beating Jen's scores now, if I put in the same amount of work as she's put in, then maybe I could do this internationally and be quite good at it.
Ba mi chéint ag Seonaid spórs Ballantyne nó de chuide amach go raibh fulling le rheumatoid arthritis.
I was 17 when I got diagnosed, which is kind of around about the time where I started taking the sport more seriously, and I was around about the time where I thought I might be able to go to the Commonwealth Games in Glasgow. If I started shooting a wee bit better, it's kind of happened around about the same time. And I think it didn't impact my shooting physically. I think if I was having problems with the arthritis, I just couldn't shoot. So it's not it was affecting my shooting per se, I suppose. But yeah, when I first got it, I was kind of now, is this going to stop my career going any further than it's gone right now? Is this the universe telling me that it's not going to happen for me? I wasn't really sure. So there was definitely questions around whether I was going to keep shooting or not at the time. But I kind of, with my parents' support, it was kind of just keep going until you can't, and then see what happens, I guess. So that's what I did, and I ended up not being too much of an issue in the end.
Ha an sé ha céas blina fichad coiúnan leis an àrd-oifigear an túl san rifle prone 300 meter. Root a ha could una got a hast.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy as well because it's in an event that I'm not really that experienced at. It's not an Olympic event, and it's one that I only taken up relatively recently before I did that. So my first, I shot a few matches down sort of to the south of England in a place called Bisley. I shot quite a few matches there, but my first actual international match was that one. So yeah, I went to Italy, and the range was really nice. It was kind of quite sheltered, so there wasn't too much wind to have to deal with. And the day before, so we have like elimination and then qualification is what they call it. So it's one day you have to shoot a match and then X many people of the group get through to the next day. So there was 2 matches, and on the first day I was really struggling and just like didn't feel quite right in the position and things. I had like a new jacket and it just like was feeling a little bit uncomfortable or whatever. And then the next day I was kind of like, you're just going to have to get on with this and ignore the uncomfortableness. And I did, and I got up at the end and I was like, hey, that was pretty good. And everybody's like staring at me and I was like, what did I do? And they were like, that's an equal world record. I was like, nah, no it's not. So yeah, I kind of didn't really believe it at the time. So yeah, it was really cool.
Thóg Seán a cúpa na Cluinnidh an na dábhaillis an éideag, agus ha ag adamh a hún sa dúil. Is íon sé losci a cervicala a bhain díobh an an breichting.
Again, like, I was kind of fighting with this suit. Like, I don't know if you've seen the pictures, but we wear these like really weird suits. And I was kind of like fighting with the suit. It didn't quite fit and I was kind of still getting used to it. So yeah, like having put in that good performance and like winning the medal was super, super cool. And like, I think I was the first British person to win a World Cup medal, or maybe the first British female, I think. So yeah, to win it and to come home with it, I was like, yay, this is awesome. It's a bit weird because like on an international stage, I wouldn't say I'm like the best. I reckon there's kind of maybe a handful, like 10 women in the world who are all just as good at each other, and it just depends who won on the day. Like I'm quite lucky to still be world number 1 because of COVID. Like at the moment I'm world number 1 by default because we haven't had any competitions. But I reckon there's maybe like 10 or 12 women in the world who are just as good at each other as each other. But yeah, like to be the best that Britain's ever had is really cool because we've had some pretty cool people, my sister included.
Han sé losci mar fárs de skip bhreichting ag na Geamaichean Oilimpigeach. Ha I mochtal ans na rútana ha is Choinnidh le a hachad mar chóte.
Oh, it's super exciting. Yeah, I qualified just over 2 years ago, so I've been waiting this long to be able to say like I've been selected, and like they were kind of, loads of people have been like, oh, but like you knew you were going, and I was like, I mostly knew, but like there's always that little bit that's like before it's like official, you're kind of like, well, am I going, am I not? So yeah, now that it's really official, I'm like super, super excited and like, I'm going. So yeah, it's really cool. I think even if I do come home without a medal, I'm still really happy with how my career's gone so far, I guess. I'm really happy with everything I've done. I'm quite proud of myself and proud of all my support team and everything that's helped me. My dad's my coach, so proud of him too. Me and my dad get on really, really well, so like we're a great team together. We always know like what the other one's thinking as well, and there's all that kind of the like trust that you need to have with your coach is just there because he's my dad. So yeah, it's great. I love working with him.
Sé beún Olympigach an rút ha Seona a gamas is mór a ha fanierchi. Is I cúteach a cointe dort gus clíoch a chuide de trénach íle te reiche.
I'd love to win an Olympic medal. That'd be really cool. That's kind of my I don't know, short-term goal, I guess. I'm really looking forward at some point to, I've trained as an engineer at university. I'm really looking forward to sort of getting into industry and working more on that at some point in the future. I don't know whether that's later this year or in 3 years or in 4 years, I don't know. Take each day as it comes, I guess. But yeah, Olympic medal would be nice.
Laura, it's so lovely to hear Seona talk about her career because she's so humble, but she's achieved so much.
Yeah, very much so, incredible, and still so young as well. And I think, you know, just to reflect on what we said earlier in terms of mental strength, you know, clearly to have such a, you know, a debilitating illness at 17, but yet be able to overcome that mentally and strive, you know, and become the very best in our game is incredible.
It's amazing, and even me watching that, it's such an inspiration just to see how far she's come, like say with rheumatoid arthritis too.
Yeah, no, incredible, but such, again, you know, very similar to Aimee in terms of really, really infectious personality, you know, humble, bubbly, just clearly loves her sport.
Well, it's so nice as well how much her family's involved in sport. I mean, for so many people, it is family influence that kind of spurs them on to do what they do sport-wise. Did you have that with your career?
Yeah, certainly, you know, my parents are really supportive. I think, you know, all kids need that, you know, unless you've got parents that are going to give up time, transport you everywhere, particularly as well, you know, maybe like Seona, if you're in a minority sport, you've probably got a family interest in it in the first place, you know, they're probably a coach, etc. So yeah, I had that very much so with my mum and dad as well.
A football daft family?
Well, yeah, I'd say my mum more by default. She's now football daft, but my dad certainly is. Well,
that's brilliant. But I suppose sticking with football, the national team is back in action very soon. The squad was just announced this week. What are your initial thoughts?
Truthfully, quite surprised that there wasn't, for example, Glasgow City player Hayley Lauder wasn't involved, but that's just my, personal opinion. Certainly, a couple of changes needed to be made. There's, some of our very notable players are injured. Leanne Crichton obviously just announced her retirement. So yeah, listen, it'll be interesting. I think it's 2 games that really we know can't impact, the table. So, I think it's just good it's good for the Scottish girls to be able to train and play, because otherwise they can't do so. So let's see what comes of it. But obviously from my perspective, really proud that our captain is part of the coaching staff. So that's huge for Leanne Ross.
Have you spoken to her? She must be delighted.
Yeah, no, she's absolutely thrilled. And to be fair, the SFA kind of asked us first, if we were okay for that, because if we had been allowed to come back and train, clearly Leanne wouldn't have been able to do so. She would have been away coaching with the squad. But a massive opportunity. I mean, I think for me, Leanne's obviously still playing, but you can see in the way she leads the team, her knowledge of the game, she will be an outstanding coach one day. So it's fantastic that she's getting that opportunity just now. And
a number of SWPL players involved. Are you happy to kind of see that within the league up here in Scotland?
Yeah, totally. I think the more international players we have based in Scotland, the better. It means we've got a really, really strong league. And I think again, that's probably emphasising my frustration, why we're currently not able to train and play, because we've managed to attract, quite a few international players back to play in our professional league here. So it's fantastic, when a squad is announced, to see, more and more players playing their domestic football in Scotland, because that literally means that, our league's at a really, really good level.
Well, with this Scotland team and the games that they're playing, it was for the Euro qualifiers, which they cannot now progress. Do you think maybe with these 2 games they've missed an opportunity of bringing younger players in?
Yeah, listen, I think I think Scotland's got. I think we've got the best squad we've ever had. I think without a doubt this is the kind of golden generation. We have still there is still quite a lot of young players in there. Some of the younger ones are currently injured, like Abby Grant's still quite young. I don't think we've got a huge amount of, if I'm honest, like teenage kids bursting through. We don't, hope I'm not doing anyone a disservice, but we don't have the next Erin Cuthbert, I would say, sitting there that you would say, why is she not in? So I think, listen, anybody can disagree with any squad, but I just wish the girls all the best.
Well, if we talk about head coach, we've got Stuart McLaren in as interim head coach. In terms of this Scotland position, it's a huge and a very important job that somebody will come into. What kind of person do you want to see in that role, and what do you want them to do with that squad?
I think, I suppose 2 things for me. I think firstly, some of the biggest challenges we have in the game is that we don't have the same infrastructure behind the women's game, and that, I mean, in terms of taking the game forward. So probably our game advanced the most when Anna Signeul was the head coach, and that's because Anna didn't just coach the team, she changed the entire infrastructure of the game. But similarly, that's wrong. That's not really your role as head coach. So a head coach should only actually just take the team, like for example Steve Clark does. But if I'm honest, we do probably need someone with a bit of a dual skill set, because we just simply don't have enough. We just don't have enough staff at the SFA. So I think someone that's incredibly passionate about the game. I think for me, somebody that really pushes the boundaries for equality, and demands the exact same. If the guys are getting a meal allowance at 30 quid a head when they're away with the national team, the women really should get the same, and not, if the men are getting to go in chartered flights because that's deemed to be the best preparation, the women should get the same. And unfortunately we're not there yet. So I certainly would like, for me, a head coach that wants equal opportunities for his or her players, to give them the best platform to achieve great things for our country.
Is there anyone you've got in mind?
No. No, listen, I think there's so many good quality coaches out there. I think though we're at a stage now where the women's game's progressed so much, good coaches cost a lot of money. I do know, in Scotland our budget for the head coach certainly hasn't been the highest when we look at, other nations or even other club sides. So that, if I'm honest, might put off some of the very best coaches. But, I'm pretty sure even out with that, there's a huge calibre of candidates, and I'm sure the SFA must be inundated with applications. Do
you think the SFA need to be doing more to kind of push this Scotland team ahead?
Yeah, I think it's probably been a challenge for them because we've not had a head of girls and women's football. There's been nobody really in charge of the women's game. The person in that post left 18 months ago. They've still not been replaced, so undoubtedly that has stagnated the game. There's just no other ways around it. You know, I see that as someone that lives and breathes it. That's just the truth. That's just what happened. So I think if the revitalisation, we know that post is about to be announced in terms of the new person. I think they'll be fantastic at it if it's who I think it might be. I think if we add that in with a new head coach, then yeah, hopefully we start to get back on track, because we were on a kind of great trajectory to the World Cup, and we've probably not maintained that, if I'm brutally honest.
Just a small matter of a pandemic in the middle.
Yeah, small matter of a pandemic. But listen, I think, national team wise, although we have a few players towards the end of their career, we still have an incredibly talented squad. And Kim Little, Caroline Weir, Erin Cuthbert, we have 3 of the most talented players that would play for any national team, and it's we've got a really, really good base to build from.
Brilliant. Well, best of luck to Scotland too.
Yep.
Thank you, Laura. Well, sin air some program na seachcin sa, ma hang for the Laura is in a big call rooms in studio. Fit sure garlantal gach seachcin ar YouTube, mar sin Jan Keen seachcin ein shape gavella court of rape, give sure garlantal agus na calcium programs in B. Kinnick a gresh on program akifshe, mar sin skill van the fat this farshing agus cumma bar of a coid. But I think spores for enough na halba, mar sin live and dran.